in front of a runaway train.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Zika from Constable of Rooks. Today we'll be going over how to modify an M249 box mag to work with the G&P Stoner 63 system. The box mag that the Stoner 63 originally comes with is an incredible system. However, it falls short in a few areas for Constables of Rooks. The housing that holds the box magazine is too large and bulky for keeping the platform as M4-like as possible. Transitioning shoulders with the original box mag can be cumbersome and awkward for the user. The housing and box mag also adds nearly 2 pounds due to its plastic and metal construction. We want to keep our guys as light and versatile as possible. The original box mag and housing doesn't allow for that.
Before beginning, let's go over what is needed for the mod. For this mod, you are going to need wire cutters, flat and Phillips head screwdrivers, soldering iron, solder and flux, 1/8 inch shrink wrap tubing, 2-pin male and female JST connectors, and a Mag brand or Classic Army M249 box magazine pouch. Let's begin. It is important to note before you go any further that you must have some sort of simple MOSFET installed into your rifle. Otherwise, you can end up accidentally frying your box mag motor. Replacement kits are available, just try not to fry them. For this video, we will be using the Mag M249 box mag. However, this will also work with some generations of the Classic Army M249 box mag. First, start by removing the plastic housing from the fabric pouch. Unsnap the button and then unzip. Be careful pulling the zippers around corners as you can actually pull it off the teeth of the zipper. Just take your time and don't force it over. Once unzipped, slowly pull the plastic housing down and out, being sure not to catch or cut the wires on the feeding lip or anywhere else. Splitting the housing in 2 separate pieces can be tricky, however if you take your time, you can do it with minimal issue or damage. There are 4 slotted spring pins around the outside of the housing that you cannot see. You want to be sure not to bend them as it can break the plastic that houses them. To separate, carefully pull apart from the top of the mag as seen here. Pull them apart gently. The goal here is not to pull the halves apart by hand, but rather to create just a large enough opening for us to use a flathead screwdriver as a pry bar. Slowly move around the box mag, prying the 2 halves apart. Again, I cannot stress enough how important it is to take your time. If you don't, you may end up breaking a crucial part of the box mag. You can see some of the slotted pins as I pry this apart. Be sure to take extra time around those areas when you decide to pry them apart. As you can see here, trying to force it open just ends up closing the other side that I just tried to pry open. This is why you don't just try to pry it open with your hand. Take your time and pry the shut side open again. Once open enough, then you can pull the halves apart, still being careful of the slotted spring pins. Congrats, that's probably one of the more time consuming and hardest parts of this mod. Now that you have the halves separated, remove the motor, Bowden tube, and feeding mechanism from the housing. Remove the feed base from the Bowden tube and then remove the motor from the feeding mechanism. You are going to want to remove these 4 screws and 1 nut from the back. Take your time, they are just screwed into the plastic and you don't want to accidentally strip the plastic. While you are here, pull gently to remove the Bowden tube from the feeding mechanism. One less part for you to hold on to when you get further into the system. Removing this last bolt, you can see my fingers holding the flange piece on the other side. Make sure you don't let that fall out. To separate the two halves of the feeding mechanism, slide out to the left and then pull up once it has cleared this flanged piece. Turn the piece over that you just took out. You will notice here that there is a gap. This was placed here in case any back pressure from the feeding mechanism needs to be released. It will push BBs out through here. The issue with that is that it almost never happens based on the design, and more often than not, it gets in the way of the gears of the feeding mechanism and just makes it jam up. You want to cut and fill this area with a piece of the 1/8 inch shrink wrap tubing, folded in half. It is just thin enough to fit in here while also retaining enough rigidity to hold the BBs back. This is how you want to have it positioned. This just shows you the rigidity of this option. You want it to still have some flex in case something does go wrong, but you don't want BBs to get in the way of the gears of the feeding mechanism. Once this piece is installed, we can put the feeding mechanism back together. Start by taking the half that you just worked on and lay it flat. Take the other half and slide it left to right, being careful of the flanged piece. Align it and place it where it was before. Turning it over and putting the screws and nut back on. I recommend starting the nut by hand first, as it is easier to feel if you are going to be cross-threading it. Insert the Bowden tube back into the feeding mechanism before you put all the screws back in place. This next part is critical if you want your box mag to feed as flawlessly as possible. You have to make sure that this flange piece and the feeding mechanism spins freely inside of its housing. You can test this by just spinning it. You want it to be able to spin freely without any resistance. To adjust this, all you need to do is tighten or loosen the screws in the back to make it spin freely. All it takes is the right combination of the screws and nuts to make this work. Take your time and you'll eventually get it. Now we are going to move on to taking apart the motor. To take the motor assembly and housing apart, start by unscrewing these 4 screws. Remove the motor carefully and then remove these plastic gears at the bottom here. As you can see, there's this yellow film and grease that comes stock from the factory. Unfortunately, this is not the highest quality grease, so what I recommend is cleaning these off with hot water and or mineral spirits if you have any. Let them dry and reapply grease. I recommend using Super Lube. Do not overload these gears with grease. They don't need it. Coat it liberally without overloading it. Follow what you see here to put the gears back together. Be careful, you don't want to roll or break any of the teeth on these gears. Once put back together, place the housing and assembly to the side. Next, take your motor and wiring harness. I recommend writing on the side of the motor what color the wire is for each contact. Keep it simple, positive and negative works too, something that you will easily remember. Once this is done, desolder the wiring harness from the motor, putting it to the side as you will no longer be needing this. Add more solder to the motor contacts if needed. This is where you are going to want to solder the male 2-pin JST connector to the motor. Take your time and make sure it is soldered properly. Don't make the mistake like I did here and solder the wrong connector on. Insert the motor and wires back into the housing, and route the wires out the side as seen here. You can then reinsert the 4 screws back into the holes that they originally came out of. Congrats, you have now finished with the inside of the box mag. You can now begin putting it back together. Insert the feeding mechanism and Bowden tube like this back into the housing. Place the motor back in to make sure that the teeth of the feeding mechanism are aligned with the motor. Take your time and don't force it in. Remember, these are just plastic teeth and you don't want to break them. Insert the feed lip onto the Bowden tube and place it back into the box mag housing. Now this next part can be tricky, so take your time. Place the other half of the box mag housing onto the slotted spring pins. Make sure everything sits the way it should. This can take some time to get right, just don't force it down. Don't forget to put in the BB feed door as well. Once it sits properly, then slowly apply pressure around the edge of the box mag, making sure that you aren't pinching any wires or anything else. Take the plastic housing and the fabric shell. You can then lead the wire through the groove at the top of the fabric shell, then slowly begin to insert the plastic housing back into the shell. Make sure you don't force it and take your time. You don't want to rip the fabric or worse, ruin the zipper. That's it, you're done with the box mag. You are then going to want to cut the wiring coming out of the hop-up block and solder on and install a female 2-pin JST connector to the pre-existing wires, just as it is seen here. My apologies for not showing you in this video how to do this. The stoner we bought was used and already had this done to it. In this final segment, I'll be showing you how to use an MK48 box mag and install the airsoft internals into it. This won't apply to everyone, so if you don't need this, thanks for watching and look forward to part 4, barrel mods and lightning. So for the MK48 box mag, you're going to remove the plastic box mag housing from the fabric shell of the box mag again. Something here that is important to know is that you're going to need a much longer male 2-pin JST connector and wire soldered to this. I will leave the length of it up to you, but it has to be enough to get up and out of the box mag. You are also going to need a larger Bowden tube. This black one that originally comes with the box mag is not long enough, nor is the one that comes stock on the rifle. For this, I recommend the one that I linked in the Google document in the description. You can cut it to the desired length and you'll have some extra left over. Start by unbuckling and unvelcroing the zipper. Open the box mag. Make sure that the opening on the top of the box mag lines up with the feed tube. Insert it into the box mag housing. Ideally, your Bowden tube and new wiring will stick up and out of the opening at the top of the box mag. You are then going to want to make sure that the plastic housing sits flush with the bottom of the fabric shell. Close the zipper back up and re-velcro it. If you want to have a short MK48 box mag such as the ones that the Green Mountain Rangers use, you're going to either have to find a 50 or 75 round version of this box mag or cut and sew your own to the same length. I won't be showing you that in this video though. Thanks for watching guys.